Hello and good evening, Chicago. Welcome on in to another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam Karnick here with you tonight. We got lots to go through, lots to get over. An interesting show in store for us tonight. The NFL Draft season is officially upon us with the advent of the Scouting Combine. Everybody's getting ready to go to Indy. Ryan Poles has officially made it known that the number one pick is up for sale. Shocking, I know. But apparently that was surprising news to some people. But then we got some questions like, is this going to stay the way that it has been? The NFL Players Association has let people know that, hey, maybe things would be changing. Maybe they'd like to see some changes. Some of that's got to be bluffing. Some of that's got to be boasting. But I imagine there's some truth to it. Could this mean changes not only to the combine, but to the draft as a whole? Does the draft really work? Does it achieve its goal? Well, this is just a perfect sports radio kind of conversation, so I figured we'd dive in and talk about it a little bit. So that's what we're going to do here on the show tonight. Plus, we're going to have some Blackhawks news and updates, and we've got a new villain in the Cubs-Cardinals rivalry. Oh boy. All that and more. Buckle on up, everybody. Let's have some fun. And welcome on in to Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I am your host, Adam Karnick. Glad to be back with you for another episode of the show here. Just glad that hopefully everybody's safe and healthy and having a good time, getting through some very, very peculiar February weather. Just downpoured today with the rain. Very unusual, very different for this time of year. I don't mind not having to shovel the rain. I've always said that you never have to shovel rain. But at the same time, it is weird dealing with all the standing water and the puddles and everything going on with a late February thunder shower. Weird stuff. Anyway, that's not why you're here. We're not here to discuss the weather. We are here to talk sports, and we are going to do a lot of that on the show here tonight. I'm going to start off with talking football because, of course, what else? Why not? It's always a good idea to talk football. So we're going to talk some of that. And with the scouting combine starting later this week, we've got an interesting angle to take on all that before we get into actual hardcore analysis of everything. And then we're also hopefully going to be talking a little bit of hockey and some baseball while we're here. Spring training is in session down in Arizona and Florida. So we've got a little bit of baseball to fit in tonight as well. We are it, by the way, for IE Sports Radio tonight. Taryn is not going to be doing Set Point tonight. He's going to be doing Set Point tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock Central Time. So we are it. I am going to make a solemn promise right now. I'm going to do my best to try to not abuse the freedom of the ability to stretch our legs a little bit here and take some extra time. At the same time, we may wind up going over the hour, if you will. We may go over a little bit on time, but hopefully we'll keep it engaging and keep it fun throughout the show. This show tonight, actually, if you're listening live in the chat tonight's going to be a great opportunity for you to interact with the show here tonight. If you're listening live, take the opportunity right now. If you have not if you haven't created an account for yourself on Spreaker, do so right now. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It allows you to then interact with the show in the chat room. Taryn's in there right now. Speaking of Taryn, he's got some announcing duties tonight. That's going to keep him. That's why he's not doing his show tonight. He's got some announcing duties that he's up to, so he's going to keep one ear on the show and one ear on his job, of course. But hop into the chat. We can interact and have some back and forth that way, because this first topic that we're going to be doing tonight is going to very much be a great opportunity for you to interact with me. I want to hear your feedback and thoughts on this topic here as we get started. We're going to be talking about the NFL draft in particular. So I'm going to give you a minute now, if you haven't done this, to create an account for yourself. I'm going to give you a minute right now while I do our read for the week. Get yourself logged in, get yourself comfortable in the chat, and let's interact a little bit this way. So, IE Sports Radio, of course, has been available to you now for very close to 9 years. We've been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans. And with your help, we are ready to take the next step. When you go to our website, iesportsradio.com, you'll see our Patreon link with 5 different tiers. The first one starting at just $5 a month. This gets you a shout-out on all of our shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment. Thank you all very much for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. Want to thank our Patreon supporters right now: Bay Area Raised, Emlos Great, Key to the Gate, and Anonymous. And ways that you can interact with the station: IE Sports Radio is available for you on all the major social platforms. Just search IE Sports Radio. That'll work on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. That gets you all of them right there in one place. This show is available for you as well on Twitter at IESRC. That's where you'll find the show. And then also, I am available for you on Twitter as well. I am at Adam_Karnick. If you want to follow along with me on Twitter as well, we can interact and back and forth that way as well. All right. Are you settled in? Are you comfortable? All right. So, with the scouting combine set to start later this week, this is now the unofficial start to draft season in the NFL. We've had this, we've had all the bowl games in the college season. We've had the big one, the Super Bowl. The NFL season is done. But it's been a dead period since February until now, where there's been lots of rumors flying around. See last week's show for a perfect example of that. But not a whole lot of actual substance, things that are actually happening in the NFL. Well, that changes now when we've got the scouting combine. You've got all these prospects descending in Indy. They're going to be poked and prodded by doctors. They're going to be put through their drills. They're going to be put through their regiments. And this is really where it's going to help shore up and establish draft boards. Now, a lot of GMs they're going to have a better idea of what they think of prospects. They've also got an opportunity to talk amongst themselves, start working out deals and trades, and start working through their media personnel to start rumors with some actual substance to them. We're still in lying season, so you always have to be very careful about what you're reading and from whom and all those good things. That don't take everything you read on Twitter at face value, but there starts to actually be some smoke behind some of these fires that are put out there. At the same time, not everybody's thrilled with this process. DeMaurice Smith is the executive director of the NFL Players Association. And during Super Bowl week, he threw out some interesting thoughts about the scouting combine. And I'm going to quote him directly here. Quote, "Think about it. The NCAA and the NFL structure a combine during what should be every football player's last semester in college. Who decided that it was a good idea to take your son and have him exclusively try out for the NFL's exclusive way of getting into the league? For the most part, unless you're a free agent player, you have to be invited to the combine. As soon as you show up, you have to waive all of your medical rights, and you not only have to sit there and endure embarrassing questions, and I think that's horrible, and I don't want to poo-poo any of that, but would you want your son to spend hours inside of an MRI machine and then be evaluated by 32 separate team doctors who are, by the way, are only doing it for one reason? What's the reason? To decrease your draft value. It's got to start with the players and their agents understanding that the combine today has nothing to do with how fast you run, how high you jump, and how much you lift. We've been tracking all these players since they were in grade school? If I asked you right now to pull up a high school video of the top draft picks, how long would it take you to do it? Somebody responded 30 seconds. Right. So we're now in an era where we know exactly how fast these guys can run, how much they can lift, how far they can jump, do all of these things. Why do we insist on them showing up in Indianapolis? It's not for anything physical, right? It's for the teams to be able to engage in intrusive employment actions that don't exist anywhere else. End quote. That's DeMaurice Smith, executive president of the NFL Players Association. Obviously, some of what he is saying there is to be taken with a grain of salt, because he also later went on and said that basically he'd be fine with it if it was a combine being run by the Players Association instead of the league. So some of this is obviously just a power grab, trying to say, well, the power should be with these guys and not these guys. It should be over here instead of over there. Some of it also the comment about, these guys are college students, their final semester. Yeah, okay. They're college students in name only. They haven't been college students like, your typical average student is a college student. That's not typical. Their college experience is incredibly different from everybody else's college experience when you're a D1 athlete in a major sport like, in a revenue generating sport like football. As we say hello and good evening to Mike Pat in the chat room. Hello, Mike. Mike made his triumphant return on Mike Wines About DMV Sports last week, Friday, and absolutely knocked it out of the park. Good to have you back, Mike. Hope wife and baby are doing well. You're traveling down a path that I'll be going down here any day now. Baby number two has arrived in the Pat household. We are anxiously and exciting awaiting baby number 2 in the Karnick household literally any day. But DeMaurice Smith does bring up some interesting points, especially in the medical side of things, that ultimately what's being done here with the combine is the doctors are looking at it and basically trying to come up with reasons for teams to not draft any of these players, that they'd ultimately like all these guys to be skipped. Here's a reason, you shouldn't take this guy that early. You should take him down here. Because of X, Y, Z. And occasionally, yes, there are some genuine medical things that come up that, oh, wow, hey, did you know you've been playing with this condition? It might actually kill you. You probably shouldn't play professional football anymore. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Wow, you just saved my life. Thank you. That does occasionally happen in the combine, but far more often than not, it's, that arm didn't quite heal exactly the way we wanted it to. Oh, man, you better knock him down a round for that. Instead of taking him in the second round, you better look at taking him in the third or fourth round. That's a lot better value for him at this point. And that's kind of what Smith is ultimately arguing about. Well, what's his end game here, though, really? I mean, the scouting combine this is nothing new. The scouting combine's been going on as we know it today since 1987. This is the 37th scouting combine, I think. I'll be honest. If somebody in the chat room wants to check me on this, I would appreciate it. I don't remember if they held one in 2020 or not. It might have snuck in before shutdown, but anyway, at least it's the 36th combine as we know it. They've been meeting in Indy since 1987 in this way, in this regard. So what's ultimately the end game here? Well, you could surmise that the end game could ultimately be that, and Mike chiming in the chat, the combine has zero impact on how good the player will be. It simply impacts how much money they'll be able to make. Exactly. That's exactly it. It's an opportunity for the owners to come up with an excuse that, we can't take him until round X, where, conveniently enough, we don't have to pay him as much money. Which brings us to the draft as a whole, which might be Smith's ultimate goal here, to do away with the NFL draft. DeMaurice Smith wouldn't be the first executive president of the Players Association to openly admit that he wants to get rid of the draft. There's been his predecessor also talked about how unfair the draft is, that in no other industry is this considered normal, where you finish college, you have your degree in whatever your field is, business, financing, teaching, music, whatever it is, and instead of just being able to put your resume out there and, hey, I'd like to come work for you, will you hire me? Instead, you get put into a pool where ultimately there is one business that you're allowed to go work for, and you have very little say in how much money you're going to make. You basically get offered a deal, and it's take it or leave it. In any other practice, this would in any other business in the U.S., this would actually be illegal. This would be shut down as the technical term would be antitrust, that it would be unfair to the workers, and it would be a practice that would be stopped. In the NFL, they're able to get away with it because there's a union, and the union in the collective bargaining agreement has said, yes, we will agree to work under these terms. But does the draft actually work? Does it really work? Does it actually set up a system? Does it do what it thinks it does? Does it work for everybody? Well, to answer that, we've got to look at why the draft was set up in the first place. And if you're a regular listener of the show, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you know that I like to look at history where appropriate. I enjoy going back and looking into history for things. And Mike sets me up perfectly here asking my question here, so I'll get to that comment in a second, Mike. That I like looking back into history and seeing how something came to be. During shutdown a few years ago, I actually did a podcast episode. I wrote a podcast episode all about the history of the draft. I'm not going to do the entire thing for you now. First of all, it's an hour long, and I have other things I want to talk about tonight, so we're not going to do that. I will tweet it out and share it if you feel so inclined. It was not with IE Sports Radio. It was my own independent thing, but I still have the notes from it, and I've listened to it a couple times in prepping for tonight, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to go back and just kind of review some of that a little bit. So the NFL draft dates back, actually, the first draft was in 1936. The origin for it, though, actually comes from the 1935 offseason, where the Philadelphia Eagles attempted to sign a free agent rookie running back. And that running back was Stan Kostka. Ultimately, Kostka did not sign with the Eagles. He actually signed with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Yes, there was a Brooklyn Dodgers football team back in the day. The reason that the Eagles were unable to sign him, basically they got outbid. The Dodgers got into a bidding war with the Eagles, and Bert Bell, the owner of the Eagles, decided he didn't want to pay as much as the Dodgers did. And ironically enough, it was $5,000. Could you imagine $5,000 in today's NFL that a team gets outbid by that much? That would be laughable at this point. But at that time, I mean, that was that would have made him one of the richest players in the league at the time. It was an exorbitant amount at the time. So Bell came up with the idea of a draft to try to keep rookie salaries down. He proposed the idea to the other owners around the league, and they all voted on it. He used the argument of a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The Eagles were one of the worst teams in the NFL at the time. If they weren't able to get good players, that would make their link in the chain weaker. And ultimately, it would cause that link to break, which would cause the whole chain to not work. That was the argument he made, that the league as a whole could only be as strong as its weakest link. The rest of the league went along with it, and the following year, they held a draft. So the draft was originally set up for two reasons. One, competitive balance, which Mike brings up in the chat. And the second reason, obviously, was to keep rookie wages manageable so that teams could afford to operate. Now, in the 1930s, the NFL looked a lot different than it does today. In the 1930s, there was no salary cap. There were no agents. There were no scouts. There was no players' union. Obviously, there were no television deals. The telephone itself was still a fairly new invention. In short, it was a very different world back in the 1930s when the draft was set up. Now, you had a situation there in the 1930s where actually before the draft, you had rookies actually signed contracts with multiple teams, and the league would then have to figure out days later, when the contracts would make it to the league office by mail, 2, 3, 4 days later, who actually put their contract in the mail first and would actually get the player. Obviously, that would never happen today anymore. We find out, teams, players announce who they've signed with on Instagram and Twitter almost instantaneously. You find out anymore in real time. So some of the problems that existed in the 30s just simply don't exist anymore today. That feels inefficient. Yes, they also didn't have much of a choice, Mike. I mean, it was mail or carrier pigeon. The fax machine didn't even exist yet in 1935. So there really wasn't any other way for them to get these contracts in. But yeah, it definitely caused problems when you've got players signing contracts with more than one team, playing one off the other and signing with team A and also signing with team B, and then We'll see which one gets in the mail first, and that's who I'll go play with. I didn't tell them, so they have, I didn't tell Team A that I also signed with Team B. How are they going to know? They'd find out days later and have a mess to untangle. So, also, the league in the 1930s literally had never been the same size twice. You had teams coming and going year in, year out, year in, year out, year in, year out. It was the Wild West. That doesn't exist anymore today. So there are situations there that the draft addressed that simply aren't problems anymore. Another thing to look at with the draft, we hear the argument of competitive balance. That it is done to help maintain competitive balance. And the question becomes then, does the draft really help with competitive balance? We all understand the principle and the theory behind it of why it works. But does it actually work in practice? I don't have a perfect way to analyze this, but I've got a suggestion. I've got the list here of how many times each team has had the number one overall pick. And what we want to do is we kind of want to compare this list to how many Super Bowls has this team won. I know it's not perfect because the draft outdates the Super Bowl by a good 30 years. So this isn't going to be perfect. I understand. And there's a lot more variables at play. But for the purposes of our show tonight, I think we'll be able to get a little bit of an understanding anyway. First of all, do you want to guess? It's actually a tie at the top. Which two franchises have had the number one overall pick the most? I'll give you an opportunity. I wanted to do some trivia here tonight, so I'll give you a chance here in the chat. Who do you think has had the number one overall pick the most? There's two teams that have tied. The number is 7. 7 times each that these franchises have had the number one overall pick in the draft. 30 of the current 32 teams have had number one overall picks, by the way. There are 2 teams that have not. There are 3 franchises that have not. There's one franchise that has had it that's also now dead. So that's what throws it off a little bit. One of them is an older franchise, yes, but one of them is a newer franchise. So I'll give them to you here. The 2 teams that have tied for the most, Cardinals and Lions, good guesses. The Cardinals are in the top 3. The Lions they're both in the top 10. The Cardinals are 3 and the Lions are 9. Or really tied for 4th. The Colts and the Rams are the 2 franchises that have had the most number one overall picks with 7. Then you've got the Cardinals, the Browns, and the Buccaneers are all tied for 3rd with 5 overall. And then the Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Lions, and Patriots all are then tied for 6th. They round out the top 10 with 4 selections each. So now let's look here. How many Super Bowls have these teams won? The Colts, they've tied for the most. They've got 1 Super Bowl win. The Rams, of course, they just won the Super Bowl here not that long ago. They also ironically have apparently just given up all hope in ever having a first round pick again. I honestly think their next first round pick is in 2025 at this point. I don't 100% know that to be true, but I know that, they've had a habit lately of just giving away their first round picks. They just did win a Super Bowl. They've got a couple other Super Bowl wins under their belt. Then you've got the Cardinals and the Browns. They have 0 Super Bowl wins amongst them. The Browns, hell, they've never even been to the Super Bowl. Their last NFL title predates the Super Bowl era. You've got the Buccaneers. They've won 2 Super Bowls. The Atlanta Falcons, they've never won a Super Bowl. The Buffalo Bills, they've never won a Super Bowl. The Bengals, they've never won a Super Bowl. The Lions, they've never even been to the Super Bowl. And then you have the Patriots, who, of course, have won a bazillion Super Bowls, but it was due in large part to a quarterback that they took in the 6th round. So how important were these number 1 overall picks in their actual, in their Super Bowl wins? They never had a number 1 overall pick that they drafted that helped them win a Super Bowl. And the Rams have won 2 Super Bowls. Have won 2 Super Bowls in their history. So going back and looking at this, these are the top 10 teams that have had the number 1 overall pick the most. You've got 12 Super Bowl championships there, but that number is drastically skewed by the Patriots dynasty, that none of their first round picks helped them with that. None of their first overall picks helped them with that dynasty. So how much, and then, meanwhile, you've got teams like, the Texans, who've only been around for 20 years. They've already had the number 1 overall pick 3 times. You've got the Steelers, have never had the number 1 overall pick. No, the Titans have had the number 1 overall pick. The Tennessee Titans. Now, remember, they also are the Houston Oilers franchise from forever ago. So they have had the number 1 overall pick twice in their history. But the Steelers have never had it. The Ravens have never had it. And the Seahawks have never had it. Those are the 3 that have never had it. The Steelers, they're one of the most prolific they're a model franchise in the NFL. They haven't had a losing season in over 20 years. They've never had the number 1 overall pick. They were the original NFL dynasty in the Super Bowl era. So it begs the question. Now, I know this is way imperfect. I know that this argument that I just made right here, no way is it all encompassing. I get that. There's so much more into building a team than simply having the number 1 overall pick. I get that. Larry B joining in. Well, you're getting right to the heart of what I'm doing here. Does the draft work? I think you could make an argument that the draft really doesn't work for competitive balance. It does work in keeping your salaries low. And that's the other side of the coin. That was the other side of the coin when Burt Bell brought it up way back in 1935. And it got brought up again in 2011 when they redid the collective bargaining agreement and capped how much rookies can make. Now, I want to stop right here and say I kind of agree with the rookie salary cap. It does, to me, make sense that, hey, the kids coming fresh out of college shouldn't automatically become your highest paid employees when they've never shown that they can do the job. So I do agree with that in some respects. But I wonder if just having straight up free agency wouldn't work better. And here are some reasons why I think it could work. You've got, unlike in 1935 and 1936, when the draft was first implemented, you now have a salary cap in place. It doesn't matter how much money a team literally has. They're only allowed to spend so much on players year in and year out. There's also a salary floor that they have to meet. Did you hear that, baseball? A salary floor. I know I've brought that up a lot with baseball. Anyway, the draft works in setting the best college players of the Lions. Yes, you wind up with the Lions and the Texans drafting in the top 5 every year. You also wind up with you have a salary cap in place now that you didn't have back then. So you still have to manage that. Anybody that plays fantasy football, obviously we're all familiar with when we draft in fantasy football, the more traditional snake draft where everybody takes a turn and you draft this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. It emulates the real draft. Well, there's also an option for some fantasy football leagues called an auction draft, where rather than taking turns, everybody has a dollar amount. They've got $100 in their team's bank that they're allowed to spend. You have to field a full team. You have to spend at least $1 on every player, and you have to field a proper and full-sized team. But a player gets nominated and he gets awarded to the team that bids the most for the player. So you can wind up with multiple first-round picks. You can wind up with players with a skill set of multiple first-round picks. What that typically means that you've got to be careful, though. If you overload on the first 2 or 3 guys you take, then you wind up with, oh, man, I still have 13 more players left, and I have no more money. I have $13 left. I can't spend more. I can't offer more than $1 for any player because I've got to be able to fill a full roster. So we see this in fantasy football. The same principle works in real football, where you have the teams bid and they just treat it like free agency. And then the teams have to understand their salary cap situation to make it fit. You could help the competitive balance by giving bad teams a little bit more money to spend. You could also cap it, okay, nobody's allowed to spend more than 50, 60 million total on their rookies this year, whatever you want to set the number at. The other thing you could just do is, hey, it's the whole salary cap is there. You've got to figure out how to fit these guys into your rookie salary cap. And it means you could also decide to take a year off. That you just, hey, you know what? We're not going to go for any rookies. We're going to simply go for vets only. We're not going to worry about putting money aside, having money set aside for rookies, that we're purely and simply going to go for the veterans. Another thing that I think getting rid of the draft would do, you would get rid of tanking. Think about it. More often than not, tanking happens at the front office level. We see it. We're starting to see it in football. We see it all the time in baseball. We see it in hockey. We absolutely see it in basketball, where teams are desperate to lose games so that they have a better chance of getting a high draft pick and getting that top player in the draft. If you get rid of a draft, there's nothing left to tank for at that point. So if you hate tanking, oh boy, now Mike's giving me homework. Mike also runs the blog for our website, and he does a fabulous job of it, by the way. I'm sold, sir. I'm on your side. I expect a blog post on this. I'll see what I can do. I'll try to make it be shorter than my last one. I make no guarantees. My last blog post broke down literally all 32 teams in the NFL. But think about it. If there's no draft, there's no reason left to tank. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't get to the midway or 2/3 point of the season and realize, hey, our team's not good this year. We have some guys on expiring deals. Let's try to flip them for some younger guys on longer term deals and try to develop them ourselves. You'd still have some of that. But obviously you couldn't flip Robert Quinn for a second round pick from Baltimore because there's no second round anymore. Teams would automatically be forced to go for it more than they do. When I was thinking about this, when I was prepping for this, that was the biggest thing that I took away from all of this was, oh my God, if you get rid of the draft, you almost single-handedly fix tanking in one fell swoop. There'd still be some maneuvering during the season, which those trades are the way more fun ones anyway. Look at the Major League Baseball trade deadline every year. We get so excited when that comes up because teams are going for it, and you get to see players flipped for players rather than players flipped for picks. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this. Please give me some feedback in the chat. Give me some feedback on Twitter at Adam_Karnick at IESRC. We're going to take a break. Some trivia questions for you, though, before we get to break. Do you know who the first quarterback, do you know who the first player taken in the NFL draft was? And how long of a career did he have? One more fun trivia question for you, then we're going to go to a break. There was a player taken in the first round of the first ever NFL draft that may have been a poet, may have been like a famous poet. Who could that be? I will throw your answers to the trivia questions into the chat. I will let you know how you did. This is Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We're going to talk some more about this tanking, but with another team in town on the other side of this break.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Attention, all sports fans! If you're someone who wakes up each morning with a list of sporting events to go along with your to-do list for the day, then you just might be a diehard. The world of sports is as vast as the ocean is deep, including the major leagues, the minor leagues, the colleges, and everything in between. This is me, your boy Larry B of IE Sports Radio, welcoming you to join me every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on The Defining Moment, a show that focuses on what really matters in the sports world, sports themselves, and nothing outside of them. Once again, tune in for The Defining Moment with me, your boy Larry B, every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on IE Sports Radio, right here on Spreaker.com. We'll see you there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy Dentarius Lava.
And we're the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Everybody, this is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host. Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. So that was a very, 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 very long opening segment there. Thank you for indulging with me, though. I hope we had a little bit of fun walking through history a little bit there. I want to pay off the tease of the trivia questions. Mike Pat did bring up the correct name. The first ever draft selection in NFL history was lineman Jay Berwanger. His NFL career lasted exactly 0 games. He was drafted first overall by the Philadelphia Eagles in 1936. Now, you remember the salary that Bell didn't want to pay for Stockus, the running back? That was $5,000, or roughly $500 a game. Jay Berwanger, when he was drafted by the Eagles, demanded a salary of $1,000 per game. He wanted an $11,000 salary to play in the NFL. Obviously, Bell said no way, no how, and he actually traded Berwanger over to the Bears. Berwanger had played at University of Chicago. Papa Bear Hallis hoped to be able to talk Berwanger into taking a little bit of a hometown discount and maybe not have as much salary. Hallis was also notoriously cheap. Berwanger said no. I want $1,000 per game, and that's what it's going to be. So he ultimately walked. He never played in a single game in NFL history. He went on to a successful career in foam rubber. The other trivia question that I threw out there was a player taken. He was 3rd overall to the Pittsburgh Pirates, that he may or may not have been a famous playwright. Bill Shakespeare. Bill Shakespeare was the first ever draft pick of the now Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a running back out of Notre Dame. He always claimed that he was a descendant of William Shakespeare. Nobody was ever able to actually claim that, or nobody was able to ever actually prove that he was a relative of the playwright, but also nobody was able to prove him wrong either. So he went around saying that he was William Shakespeare's descendant. Unfortunately, Bill Shakespeare also did not play a single game in the NFL. So one of the first draft picks, and that was actually a theme of that first draft. Over half the players that were drafted did not play professional football. You had guys like Paul Bear Bryant got drafted in that first one. Another one going off my list from a few years ago, Ed Smith, who the name almost certainly isn't going to be familiar, but we've all seen him every year. Ed Smith was the player who posed for the Heisman Trophy. He was a member of the very first NFL draft class. There was also one quarterback taken in the entire draft that first year in 1936. Len Barnum was the first ever quarterback taken. He was in the 3rd round. He went to the Pittsburgh Pirates. He did a lot more running in his career than he did throwing in his career. But if anybody ever asks you who was the first ever quarterback taken in NFL draft history, you now know the answer. Len Barnum. He was a 3rd round draft pick, and he was the only quarterback taken in that class. So I hope you had a little bit of fun there with some NFL draft trivia. Yeah, they did. They barely had the forward pass at that point. Yeah, the game itself was much closely akin to rugby than it was to what we recognize as the modern game today. So I made the argument that getting rid of The draft would also get rid of tanking. And that brings us into another team in town right now, the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks, of course, we've all been on Patrick Kane trade watch. The Blackhawks are getting ready to play tonight. They're out on the West Coast. They've been out on the West Coast for a little while. They play the Ducks tonight. Larry, your Ducks are actually favored to win the game tonight, though watch out. The Blackhawks are coming in on a 5-game winning streak, so look out there. Even though the Ducks are favored, this one might not be as easy as you'd think taking on Chicago. The Blackhawks are on a 5-game winning streak right now, but they're doing it without Patrick Kane. In fact, Patrick Kane isn't even with the team right now. He is home in Chicago waiting to be told that he's been traded. Now, remember, Kane has a no-trade clause, meaning that he has complete control over where he goes. He's let the team know that the only place he wants to go, if he has to be traded, he wants to go to New York. So the Blackhawks are working on trying to work out a trade with the Rangers to get him there. At this point, the Rangers have said they'd need to work in a third team somehow to make the money work and make all that happen and make it all possible. So they're working on making that happen. But in the meantime, Patrick Kane is not with the Blackhawks. I'm going to be very, very sad when Kane gets traded. I'm working on a goodbye. It sucks that we have to say goodbye in sports to players. When it happens, I'm working on a goodbye to Patrick Kane. I'm shocked that I haven't needed it yet. The trade deadline is this coming Friday, so I suspect that next week I will be giving my goodbye to Patrick Kane. It's going to be hard. I'm going to level with everybody for a minute here and if you'll permit me to kind of use the space for a minute to be real. It's going to hurt. It's going to sports hurt. I know it's way different from real life hurt. You know, we understand that as sports fan, that there's real life actual important crap that hurts, and then there's the unimportant sportsy stuff in our fandoms that hurt. The problem is, for whatever stupid reason, the unimportant fan sports hurt a lot of times hurts more. And maybe it's because it's in a different way. We know it's not important, but it's also 1,000% beyond our control. There's literally nothing we can do to affect it. And so maybe that's why. But this is really going to hurt when Patrick Kane gets traded. He is a huge part of the reason I got into hockey in the first place when they were building the dynasty 15 years ago. He's part of what I watched hockey a little bit in the 90s. I can remember a little bit of seeing Tony Amani and Ed Belfour. A little bit. Not a lot. And then after that, there's just nothing memorable from the Blackhawks. I have better minor league memories than I do of actual NHL memories from that point on. But Patrick Kane is a huge part of what got me into hockey when I was in college. So it's gonna hurt when he gets traded. So I'm working on a goodbye. I'll be stunned if I won't use it next week in next week's episode. I will be flat out shocked if I won't need it. I'll be happy because it means that they kept him and he wants to stay with the team too. But it's surprising. and it's sad. It hurts. It hurts in a way that's just different from everything else. The Blackhawks did make a trade, however, today. It was not the trade we were thinking would happen, but it was a trade nonetheless. The Hawks sent Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty, a defensive-man and a defensive-minded forward, and a couple of fifth-round draft picks to Toronto. What the Hawks got in return, they got a conditional first-round pick in 2025 and a second-round pick in 2026, and then a couple of prospects, some minor league forward, and a couple of minor league forwards, Joey Anderson and Pavel Gogolev. The Hawks are also going to hang on to part of McCabe's salary. They're going to hang on to half of it. That allows Toronto to basically fit him under their salary cap. For the Maple Leafs, they're in a dogfight right now in their division. For the Blackhawks, they are clearly in sell mode. They are in acquire, and specifically, they're looking at acquiring draft picks. They now have 2 first-round picks in each of the next 3 drafts. The draft happens in the summer in the NHL. So 2023, 2024, and 2025, the Hawks now have first-round picks in each of the next 3 drafts. It does stink that they're getting rid of a young defense. I mean, McCabe's only 29. It stinks that a 29-year-old who had multiple years left on his deal doesn't fit into the team's plans going forward. But they are absolutely looking for draft picks. They are absolutely looking to build almost exclusively through the draft. That's what they've been trying to just do here, is acquire as many draft picks as they can this offseason. So the Blackhawks made a move. It wasn't the move we were expecting ahead of tonight's game in Anaheim. We'll see. We're still on Patrick Kane watch. We'll see when it happens. I will definitely have thoughts when it happens on Twitter. It's going to be, it's going to hurt. Oh, is it going to hurt? And I know it's going to hurt. Oh, well, nothing I can do about it except just prep for it. All right, one more quick thought, and then we're going to get out of here tonight. Well, I know we're a little over time, but we've got room to stretch our legs tonight because Taryn, again, is going to be tomorrow afternoon with Set Point. So we are it for IE Sports Radio. We kicked off the day and we closed the day. We are it for Monday on IE Sports Radio tonight. So spring training is underway. Both teams in town have now played some games. They have had scores. They have finished. Hooray, hurrah. We've started to see some of the new rule changes. Actually, we were talking about this a little bit in the network, in the IE Sports Radio chat before the show. Larry is not a fan of the new rules. I like the new rules. Baseball as a sport has been allergic to rule changes for far too long. I applaud them for actually finally realizing that they have the ability to fix their own game, and it doesn't require just not paying people money. They can still pay players and fix the game at the same time. What a concept! Anyway, that's a different rant. So I got to watch a little bit of a spring training game this morning while I was on lunch. I like it for the most part. The pitch clock. It's very easy to put the pitch clock out of your mind and forget it's there. And then the game just moves faster with that. The lack of shifts. Oh my gosh, there are line drives going up the middle for base hits. Wow, what a concept. You know, we're so used to, you see a ball get hit and, oh, wow, that was well struck. That should be a base hit. And then the camera turns and it's, oh, look, all 5 of the infield was standing right behind second base. There, it's an out. Oh, even though it should, 90% of the infield was open, but because of the way hitting works, you can't just hit it where they're not. The pitchers are too good. But for a little closer to home, though, we may have some new spice in the Cubs-Cardinals rivalry, and I am for it. Willson Contreras, you may remember, Contreras signed with the Cardinals this offseason. The Cubs infamously decided not to deal him at the trade deadline. They couldn't find a deal that they liked. I celebrated it at the time because I thought, maybe they're going to actually hang on to one of their good young players, and they're going to realize that it's okay to pay your good young players and build around these guys. Nope. It just meant that they didn't find a deal that they liked, so they were willing to lose him for nothing. Hooray. So instead, he goes and signs with the Cardinals. And then over the weekend, on the Cardinals pregame show, Contreras was asked basically to compare the two organizations. The Cubs organization, the team that he almost literally grew up playing for, and now the Cardinals, the team that signed him. And he came out and said that he prefers the Cardinals organization, that he likes the way the Cardinals do business. He likes the way the Cardinals do baseball. It's an old school style of baseball that he likes. He prefers the Cardinal way to the Cub way. Boy, that makes that first Cardinals series at Wrigley Field suddenly a lot more interesting, doesn't it? I mean, Contreras was a guy that, had I said at the end of last season, when Contreras makes his first return to Wrigley wearing enemy clothes, what kind of a reaction is he going to get? 100%. Oh, he'll get a standing ovation. Everybody in the crowd. He's a member of the 2016 Cubs. He's a made man for life. There won't be anybody that won't like him, that won't have wonderful things to say about him. Now, you said that the Cardinals organization is better than the Cubs? Them's fighting words. Oh, man, I can't wait now for that first Cardinals-Cubs series. Don't get me wrong, there will still be people that'll cheer for Contreras, myself included. I will still thank you for everything you did, sir. The Cubs did wrong by him. I will maintain that. The Cubs did him wrong by not offering him a legitimate contract at any point in the last 4 years. But now that you've put that into the water, we've got ourselves a proper villain in this rivalry. I don't think we've really had one of those since Albert Pujols before he left St. Louis the first time. That's the last time we really had a good, proper villain in this rivalry. That's going to make this fun the couple of times. Because you know that Contreras, he'll have some things. He'll want to show up the Cubs when he comes to town. He'll want to show them that they made a mistake in not signing him, and there will be some people that will not like that. That's going to make it fun to watch. All right, that does it for our show this week. Little longer than normal, little bit different of a show than normal. I hope you enjoyed it, though. Once again, get back to me. Let me know how I did, either in the chat or at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all those ways that you can get a hold of the station. Get a hold of me directly on Twitter at IESRC, at Adam_Karnick. Let me know what you thought of the show tonight. Give me some feedback. Thank you to everybody for hanging out in the chat room. Mike Pat, Taryn Rodriguez, Larry B. Thank you all for hanging out with us in the chat room tonight. Really appreciate it. Next week, we're going to have a guest on the show. Cale Henderson of Sin City Sports is going to be on with us next week, breaking down the combine. It's still going on. It's still happening. There are some players that aren't participating in the combine for one reason or another, but there's plenty of guys that are. We're going to have some actual tangible stuff to break down, some actual football things to break down from this. So we're going to do that. Cale will be along to help with that. So be sure to check him out next week. Thank you to Larry, all the hard work he does behind the scenes at the station, keeping this ship afloat. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised, Emlos Great, Key to the Gate, and Anonymous. Thank you for your support of the station. It allows us to keep the lights on, allows us to do fun and different things here at the show. Finally, thank you for listening, whether it was live here on Monday night on Spreaker, or if you listened on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, after the fact as a podcast, any of the ways you catch it. Thank you for including me in your week. I really do appreciate it. Again, hit me up. Tell me if I'm crazy. Tell me if I'm nuts for the thoughts I had this week on the NFL draft. We're going to be getting into some draft stuff in all earnest next week. Until then, everybody be safe, be healthy. We will see you next time.